AITA for showing my son the real cost of 3 years of help after he called me heartless? I'm Justin, 58, and for the last 3 years, the loudest room in my house wasn't the TV room, the kitchen, or even the kids' play corner. It was the quiet space between me and my wife, Linda, where both of us stopped saying what we really felt because we were scared one honest sentence would blow up our family. I've been married to Linda for a long time. I'm Caleb's dad, and I'm a grandpa to 2 little kids who can still turn my whole day around by running at me with sticky hands and half-eaten crackers. I love those children. That's the part Caleb and Brianna kept using against me. For 3 years, I told myself I was being patient. I told myself a father helps his son when life gets hard. I told myself a grandfather makes sacrifices. But somewhere between the basement becoming their private apartment, the guest bathroom smelling like wet towels and old shampoo, and Linda eating dinner on the edge of our bed because the kitchen table was buried under their laundry, I realized patience had turned into permission. And permission had turned into my son believing my house belonged to him. It started with one phone call from Caleb. He was 29, married to Brianna, and going through what he called a rough stretch. He said they needed somewhere to stay for a few weeks while they got back on their feet. Just temporary, Dad, he said. I'm not trying to live here forever. I remember looking across the kitchen at Linda. She had the phone on speaker, and her face softened the way it always did when Caleb sounded stressed. He was our only son. Brianna was pregnant with their first child then. Linda mouthed, "Please," even though Caleb couldn't see her. So I said yes. Caleb brought a duffel bag that night and set it by the basement stairs. I helped him carry down a box of clothes and a game console. Brianna came over the next day just to help him settle in. Then she stayed for dinner. Then she stayed the night. Then one toothbrush became 2 toothbrushes, then a basket of shampoo bottles, makeup wipes, hair products, and a curling iron in the guest bathroom. There was never a real move-in conversation. No one sat at the table and said, "Here are the rules. Here's the deadline. Here's what you contribute." We just kept making space. Linda said, "They're young. Let's help them breathe for a minute." I agreed. I wanted to be the kind of father who didn't make his son beg. That was the first mistake. Temporary is a dangerous word when nobody writes down what it means. At first, the basement was just where Caleb slept. Then it was where Caleb and Brianna watched movies. Then it was where they kept bins. Then it was where the baby's things went because there's more room down there. Soon, the basement was an unofficial apartment with no rent, no lease, no expectations, and no end date. After the baby was born, I gave them even more grace. Babies are hard. Nobody sleeps. Everyone gets overwhelmed. When I stepped on a plastic rattle in the hallway at 2 in the morning, I picked it up and put it on the coffee table. When Brianna left damp towels on the guest bathroom floor, I tossed them into the hamper. When Caleb said he would replace the broken blind next Friday, I nodded and moved on. Then next Friday became, after this next check. Then after this next check became, things are tight right now. Then things are tight became a full year of him not replacing anything, not contributing to utilities, and acting offended any time I asked. The baby became a toddler. The second baby came along. The basement filled with storage bins labeled weekend stuff, even though they hadn't moved for years. The guest bathroom had mildew around the tub because nobody wiped it down. The sink clogged twice from hair and wipes, and things no one admitted putting in there. The family room became a maze of plastic toys, sippy cups, snack wrappers, laundry baskets, and little socks that somehow ended up under every chair. I want to be clear about something. The kids weren't the problem. They were 2 and 4 by the time everything came to a head. They were little. They made little kid messes. They spilled juice, dropped crackers, and left toy trucks where grown men could break a toe stepping on them. That was normal. The problem was their parents acting like every mess was someone else's problem because the kids existed. If I said, "Could we keep the hallway clear at night?" Caleb would say, "They're kids, Dad." If Linda said, "Brianna, can you please not leave wet towels on the floor?" Brianna would sigh and say, "I barely had time to shower. It must be nice having time to worry about towels." If I asked, "Could you at least clear the counter after dinner?" Caleb would look around like I had insulted him. "We're family," he'd say. "Why are you counting every little thing?" But it was never one little thing. It was all the little things stacked on top of each other until our house didn't feel like ours anymore. The kitchen counter was always buried under mail, fast food bags, diaper wipes, and Brianna's online shopping boxes. The fridge filled up with their leftovers and drinks, but somehow the milk Linda bought disappeared before she could use it. I would open a cabinet and find empty snack boxes shoved back inside like ghosts of groceries I had paid for. Our utility bills climbed. Not wildly, but enough that I noticed. The washer ran constantly. Lights stayed on in the basement all night. The thermostat was changed without asking. Groceries vanished faster than we could buy them. Whenever I brought up money, Caleb had the same answer. Things are tight. When I suggested even $200 a month toward utilities and groceries, he leaned back and said, "So I'm a tenant now? I'm your son." That line worked on me for a while. I hated the idea of treating my son like a tenant. I hated the idea that my own house might need rules just so my wife and I could sit at our own table. Linda hated conflict even more than I did. She would ask Caleb softly if he could help out. He would promise. Brianna would get emotional. The kids would run through the room, and Linda would drop the subject because she didn't want them hearing adults argue. Then at night, she would close our bedroom door and sit on the edge of the bed like she had been holding her breath all day. One evening, I came upstairs and found 2 plates of reheated food balanced on the bed. Linda had made dinner, but the dining table was covered with folded laundry, 2 backpacks, an open package of diapers, and a cardboard box from Brianna's latest delivery. "Why are we eating in here?" I asked, even though I already knew. Linda looked embarrassed. There wasn't anywhere to sit. I stood there with my plate in my hand, looking at my wife in the bedroom we had retreated into like guests in our own home. She tried to smile. "It's fine." "No, it's not." Her eyes filled up, but she looked away. "I know they need help, but I miss walking into a clean room." That sentence hurt more than yelling would have. I sat beside her and said, "I thought I was keeping the family together. I didn't realize I was watching you disappear." She cried quietly. Not big, dramatic sobs. Just tired tears from a woman who had spent years lowering her voice in her own kitchen. That was the night I knew something had to change. I called my younger brother, Ray, a few days later and asked him to come by for coffee. Ray is the kind of person who can hear one sentence and know what you're not saying. He walked into the kitchen, looked at the broken blind, the stack of bins near the basement door, and the sticky high chair tray in the corner, and said nothing until we sat down. I told him the whole thing. The promises, the mess, the bills, the way Caleb used the kids whenever I brought up responsibility, the way Linda froze whenever Brianna cried. Ray listened, stirring his coffee even though he drinks it black. Finally, he said, "Helping your son is one thing. Letting him wreck your marriage and call it family is something else." I rubbed my face. "I don't want to be cruel." "Then don't be cruel," Ray said. "Be clear." "I've tried talking." "No. You've tried hoping they hear what you're too afraid to say." That one landed. Ray pointed toward the basement. "Don't scream. Don't threaten. Write it down. Dates, bills, damage, promises, everything. And if you're going to ask them to leave, make sure you do it legally. No changing locks, no throwing boxes on the lawn, no heat of the moment nonsense. You're too old to let anger turn you stupid." I almost laughed because that was very Ray. Then he added, "And Justin, if they wanted privacy, they shouldn't keep using your silence as permission." I took his advice. For the next couple of weeks, I didn't argue. I watched. I listened. I pulled old utility bills from my email and compared them to the years before Caleb moved in. I found grocery receipts in a kitchen drawer where Linda stuffed them after shopping. I scrolled through old text threads and found Caleb promising to contribute next month or after this next check at least 8 different times. I took photos of the damaged carpet in the basement, the cracked cabinet door, the broken blind, the drywall dent near the basement stairs, the pile of boxes blocking the storage closet, and the guest bathroom sink after it clogged again. The folder didn't make me feel powerful. It made me feel stupid for needing proof that my own house had been taken from me one excuse at a time. Still, before doing anything else, I talked to Linda. We sat in our bedroom with the door closed, like we always did when we needed to speak honestly. "I want a written plan," I told her. 90 days. A small contribution while they're here. Cleaning expectations. Repairs. And a deadline to move out. Linda stared at her hands. She was twisting her wedding ring. 90 days? She whispered. That's 3 more months after 3 years. What if they keep the kids from us? There it was. The fear that had been sitting under every conversation. I took a breath. Then we deal with that. But I can't lose you to keep access to them. She covered her mouth. I don't want to be the reason everything blows up. You're not. Caleb and Brianna made choices. We made choices, too. Now we make different ones. It took a long silence, but Linda finally nodded. The first sit-down with Caleb and Brianna happened on a Tuesday night after the kids were asleep. I printed a one-page plan and set it on the kitchen table. I made sure it was simple: 90 days to move out, $200 a month toward utilities and groceries during that time, a weekly cleaning schedule for the basement, guest bathroom, family room, and kitchen, and a conversation about repairs. I also offered to help Caleb make a budget and look through rental options. I didn't yell. I didn't insult them. I didn't call them lazy. I just slid the paper forward and said, "This isn't a punishment. This is a deadline." Caleb read the first few lines and pushed it back like it smelled bad. "So I'm a tenant now?" he said. "I'm your son." "You are my son," I said. "You are also an adult man with a wife and 2 children. Living here can't be open-ended anymore." Brianna's eyes filled instantly. "You're trying to throw babies out on the street." "No," I said. "I'm asking 2 adults to make a plan." Caleb let out a bitter laugh. "This is about money. It's about respect, space, and responsibility. Money is part of it. We don't have it. Then let's look at the budget together." His face closed. "I don't need you digging through my life." Brianna wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "I knew you were cold, Justin, but I didn't think you would do this to the kids." Linda flinched beside me. I looked at Caleb. "The children aren't being asked to do anything. You are." He leaned forward. "So you're kicking out your own grandkids?" "I'm asking their parents to act like parents." Linda put a hand on my arm. "Maybe we should all cool off and talk later." Caleb saw the opening immediately. "Exactly," he said, standing. "This is ridiculous. Mom knows it." Brianna followed him downstairs, crying loudly enough that I wondered if she wanted the kids to wake up. The next morning, the family group chat exploded. Caleb had posted first. "Dad gave us 90 days to disappear like we're strangers. Guess helping family has an expiration date." Then Brianna added, "I never thought family would do this to 2 little kids. We have nowhere to go, and they care more about money and quiet than their own grandbabies." My phone lit up for an hour. Mary Ann, Linda's sister, wrote, "Justin, I really hope this isn't true. There are children involved. Couldn't you be more patient?" Denise, Brianna's mother, wrote, "Family doesn't put family out. I hope a quiet house is worth losing your grandbabies." A cousin sent, "I'm disappointed you'd make this about money." Someone else wrote, "Family helps family." I sat at the kitchen table with my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I typed a response so angry I barely recognized myself. "You people have no idea what you're talking about." I deleted it. Then I typed another one. "Why don't one of you take them then?" I deleted that, too. Linda stood near the sink, pale and quiet, watching my phone buzz. "They're going to hate us," she said. "They already decided to," I said. I wanted to defend myself. Instead, I decided to stop arguing with the story and answer it with facts. Over the next few days, I built the folder Ray had told me to build. I titled it, 3 Years of Help Nobody Wants to Count. I know that sounds dramatic, but after 3 years of being told I was counting every little thing, I wanted the count in one place. I printed a timeline. The night Caleb called. The week Brianna started staying over. The date the first baby was born. The month they said they would be out by summer. The month they said they needed until the holidays. The date the second baby came. Every promise that became a new excuse. I printed utility bills with the increases highlighted. I added copies of grocery receipts. I included photos of the basement damage, the guest bathroom, the stained carpet, the broken blind, the cracked cabinet door, the clogged sink, and the storage overflow. I printed the repair estimate for the carpet and drywall. I added screenshots from Caleb. "I'll pay you next Friday. After this next check, I got you. Things are tight, but I'll start helping soon. We just need a little more time." Then came the part that changed everything for me. I was looking for a message from Caleb about the broken blind when I found a screenshot he had sent months earlier by mistake in a thread where he was complaining about money. It showed a payment confirmation for a down payment on a vehicle. Not a full purchase or anything wild, but enough money that the $200 he claimed he could never spare suddenly looked very different. After that, I started noticing things I had trained myself to ignore. Doorbell camera clips of Caleb and Brianna leaving for nights out after telling us they had no money. Restaurant bags in the trash from places I knew weren't cheap. A weekend outing Brianna posted pictures from and then deleted after Linda asked if they could help buy groceries. I wasn't mad because they ever spent money on themselves. People need to live. Young parents need breaks. I was mad because they told us they had nothing while treating our home like a free backup plan and acting offended when asked to contribute the smallest amount. Then I saw Caleb's message to a friend. Dad won't actually do anything. Mom won't let him. I read it 3 times. That message hurt more than the money. It meant Caleb wasn't just depending on us. He was counting on us to stay divided. He saw Linda's fear as a tool. He saw my patience as weakness. He saw his mother not as a woman exhausted in her own house, but as the soft spot that would keep the free ride going. The worst message came from Brianna. It didn't come through some spy movie situation. Nothing like that. She sent a screenshot to the wrong text thread during one of her group chat rants. It was meant for a friend, I think, but it landed in a smaller family thread that included Linda and me before she deleted it. Linda saw it first. I heard her make a sound from the bedroom, not a scream, just a sharp little breath. I walked in, and she handed me her phone. The first message said, "We're not leaving unless they legally make us. Free rent is free rent." The second said, "Justin talks tough, but he'll cave when I bring up the kids." For a few seconds, I felt nothing. That kind of cold nothing that comes before anger because your mind needs a moment to catch up. Linda sat on the bed with both hands pressed to her mouth. I said, "Did you know?" She shook her head quickly. Then she looked away. I knew that look. "What did you know, Linda?" She started crying. "Caleb had some savings." I stood still. "How long have you known?" "A few months." "And you didn't tell me?" "I thought if you knew, you would push harder." "I should have pushed harder." "I know." I didn't yell. I almost wish I had. Yelling would have been easier than the hurt sitting in my chest. "You let me be the bad guy in my own house," I said. Linda wiped her face. "I thought if I kept everyone calm, we wouldn't lose them." "Linda, we were already losing us." She nodded, crying harder now. "I know. I'm sorry." For a while, neither of us said anything. Downstairs, one of the kids laughed at something on TV, and the sound made the whole thing even sadder. Those babies had no idea their parents were using them like shields in a war they never asked to be part of. Linda picked up the printed screenshot again. Her hands were shaking. "I was afraid they would keep the kids from us," she said. "But they're already using that fear to run this house." I sat beside her. Then we stopped letting fear make the rules. She looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw my wife come back into herself. "I don't want to be afraid in my own kitchen anymore," she said. That became the real turning point. Not the money, not the mess, not even the group chat. It was Linda finally saying out loud that our home had become a place where she measured every request against the threat of losing her grandchildren. After that, we moved carefully. I called a local attorney's office and asked about the proper process for having adult family members leave a home after a long stay. I also called a tenant rights resource to make sure I understood what not to do. I wasn't going to change locks. I wasn't going to cut utilities. I wasn't going to put their belongings outside or threaten them into leaving. Anger feels good for 10 minutes. Consequences last longer. I prepared a written move-out notice. I printed a contribution plan for the remaining time. I made copies of everything and kept the originals separate. I wrote down that Linda and I still wanted a relationship with the grandchildren and would not use them as weapons. Caleb and Brianna kept the family group chat hot. Every couple of days, one of them would post something sad or vague. Hard to believe people can turn on you when you have kids. Some grandparents only love grandkids when it's convenient. Praying for a miracle because family sure isn't acting like family. I stayed quiet. That made them bolder. The Sunday dinner was supposed to be a regular family gathering at our house because Linda had already planned it before everything blew up. I suggested canceling it, but Linda said no. "I'm tired of hiding in rooms in my own home." So we went through with it. By 5 o'clock, the dining table was covered with casserole dishes, paper plates, a salad nobody had touched yet, and half-empty cups of iced tea. Folding chairs were pulled in from the garage. The kids were in the family room watching a movie, safe and away from the adult tension. I made sure of that. Marianne arrived and hugged Linda a little too tightly while looking over her shoulder at me like I was the problem she had come to inspect. Denise came in with a covered dish and said, "I just hope everyone remembers there are children involved." That sentence had become their favorite locked door. Caleb and Brianna came upstairs from the basement late, like guests making an entrance in a house where they didn't pay a bill. Caleb leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Brianna kept one hand near her face, already teary before anyone had said a word. I had the folder beside my chair. Not on top of the table. Not waving it around. Just beside me, ready. Dinner started stiff. Forks scraped plates. People talked around the issue for about 10 minutes. Then Marianne cleared her throat. Justin, she said, I don't want to start anything, but I think people are hurt. Maybe it would help if you explained why you think this is necessary. Before I could answer, Brianna let out a broken little laugh. Explained, she said. He cares more about his quiet house than his grandkids. Every head turned toward me. Caleb leaned back in his chair like he was waiting for me to lose my temper. I guess I know what kind of father I have now, he said. Linda went pale beside me, but she didn't touch my arm. She didn't say, maybe later. She just sat straight and kept her eyes on the table. Denise shook her head. Family doesn't put family out. Marianne looked at me with disappointment all over her face. Couldn't you just give them more time? I looked at her and asked, how much more than 3 years did you have in mind? The room went quiet for half a second. Brianna wiped her eyes with a napkin. You're making it sound like we've been taking advantage. We had babies. We needed help. I know you needed help, I said. That's why you got it. Caleb scoffed. You call this help? No, I said. I call the last 3 years help. Then I picked up the folder and placed it on the table. The sound wasn't loud, but it cut through the room anyway. I said, you've all heard their version. Now you can see why I'm done. Caleb's face changed. Just a little. He tried to keep looking offended, but I saw the flash of worry. What is that? He asked. The part nobody asked for before judging me. Brianna's crying paused. I opened the folder. I didn't pass around every page. I didn't read every receipt like a man trying to win a courtroom drama. I kept my voice calm and showed the main things. This is the timeline, I said. Caleb asked to stay for a few weeks. Brianna started staying, too. 3 years later, they are still in the basement. I turned a page. These are the utility increases. These are the grocery receipts. These are the 8 separate messages where Caleb promised to start contributing and never did. Caleb snapped. Things were tight. I nodded. That's what you told us. Then I put down the photo page. These are the repairs. Broken blind. Cracked cabinet door. Stained carpet. Damaged drywall. Clogged sink. Storage overflow blocking access to things we own. Denise looked away. Brianna said, You're really showing pictures of a bathroom? That's low. No, I said. What was low was telling everyone I woke up one day and decided to throw children out on the street because I wanted silence. Marianne shifted in her seat. I took out the printed screenshots. This is Caleb saying, Dad won't actually do anything. Mom won't let him. Linda closed her eyes for a second, then opened them again. Caleb's face turned red. That was private. So was our home, I said. Then I read Brianna's message. We're not leaving unless they legally make us. Free rent is free rent. No one moved. I read the next one. Justin talks tough, but he'll cave when I bring up the kids. The silence after that felt heavier than any yelling could have been. Brianna's mouth opened, then closed. Denise stared at the table. Marianne looked at Linda for the first time like maybe she had misjudged the room she walked into. Caleb stood halfway up. You're humiliating me in front of everyone. I looked at him and kept my voice even. No. I gave you privacy for 3 years. You gave me a public trial. I'm answering it with evidence. Brianna pushed her chair back. You're cold, Justin. You always have been. You're really going to put your grandkids through this. I wanted to say 100 things. I wanted to tell her about every night Linda had eaten dinner on the bed. Every time I stepped over their mess. Every time I swallowed my own frustration because I loved the kids too much to risk the threat behind her tears. Instead, I said no. You put them in this position when you decided my house was your backup plan forever. Caleb pointed at the folder. This is insane. You've been spying on us. I've been living here, I said. There's a difference. Brianna looked around the room for support, but the room had changed. People who had arrived ready to judge me were now very interested in their plates. Marianne tried to recover. I still think maybe everyone could take a breath. There has to be a solution that doesn't involve them having to leave so fast. Good, I said. Then let's talk about solutions. I turned to the room. If family helps family, who wants to take them in next? Nobody answered. I looked at Denise. You said family doesn't put family out. When can Brianna, Caleb, and the kids move in with you? Denise's face tightened. Our place really isn't set up for that. Neither was mine, I said. We still did it for 3 years. Someone at the far end of the table muttered. That's not the point. It is exactly the point, I said. It's easy to volunteer someone else's house, someone else's marriage, someone else's money, and someone else's peace. I am done being the place everyone feels generous with. Marianne looked down at her plate. I turned back to Caleb and Brianna. I am not throwing anyone out tonight. I am not changing locks. I am not cutting off utilities. I checked what we need to do, and we're doing it the right way. I took out the written notice and placed it in front of Caleb. This is your move-out notice. 90 days from the original date we discussed. During that time, you contribute $200 a month toward utilities and groceries. You clean the basement, guest bathroom, family room, and kitchen on the schedule listed here. You are responsible for discussing repairs with us before you leave. We want to see the kids. We are not using them as weapons, and we will not let you use them as shields. Caleb looked at Linda. That was his habit. When I held the line, he looked for the soft exit. Linda's hands were folded in her lap. Her voice shook, but only a little. Your father is not throwing you away, she said. He's asking you to grow up. Caleb blinked like she had slapped him. Mom. She shook her head. I love you. I love Brianna. I love those babies more than I can explain. But I also deserve to live in my own home without being afraid to ask for basic respect. Brianna started crying again, but this time Linda didn't reach for her. Linda said, I was afraid you would keep the kids from us. I let that fear make too many decisions. I'm not doing that anymore. That was the moment Caleb lost the room. Not because everyone suddenly apologized. They didn't. Marianne mumbled something to Linda later about being sorry she didn't know it was that bad, but she still didn't offer her guest room. Denise stopped calling me cruel, but she left early and took her casserole dish with her. A couple of relatives avoided eye contact for the rest of the night, but the family group chat went quiet. That was enough. The move-out period wasn't peaceful. Caleb and Brianna didn't suddenly become grateful and mature. They were angry. They were cold. They made small comments just loud enough for us to hear. I hope he enjoys his quiet. Must be nice caring more about carpet than family. Guess we know where we stand. One night Caleb carried a plastic bin upstairs and said, I hope you're happy. I was taping a box of old toys shut, toys the kids had outgrown, but Linda wanted to save. I looked at him and said, I'm not happy. I'm clear. He stared at me, waiting for more. I didn't give him more. Brianna complained about rental prices. She said everything was impossible. Linda offered to watch the kids while they looked at places, but she didn't offer to extend the deadline. When Brianna tried to say the kids would be confused, Linda said, then explain it gently. Don't put adult blame in their mouths. That was new for Linda, and I loved her for it. I kept taking photos of the basement condition, not to be petty, but because I wasn't going back to word against word. Caleb noticed once and snapped. Still building your case? No, I said. Protecting my house. The kids stayed innocent in it, at least as much as we could manage. When they came upstairs, I read books, made peanut butter sandwiches, wiped sticky fingers, and let them help me sort crayons into a coffee can. I never said one bad word about their parents to them. Linda kept 2 little blankets on the couch for movie time. Whatever Caleb and Brianna thought of us, those children were not going to feel punished in our house. About 6 weeks in, Caleb found a place. Not perfect, according to him. Too expensive, according to Brianna. Too far from whatever was convenient that week. But it existed, and once the relatives stopped feeding their victim story, they seemed to realize we were serious. They left before the legal deadline. Not gracefully. Not with apologies. Not with a moment where Caleb hugged me and said he understood. They left angry. They left blaming me. But they left. Move-out day was a long Saturday of storage bins, trash bags, muttered complaints, and Caleb asking where things were that had been buried in our basement for years. The same bins he once said were temporary were finally carried out to a rented truck. Brianna packed the kids' clothes while refusing to speak to Linda except when she needed tape. When the truck pulled away, the house didn't look restored. It looked damaged. The basement carpet was stained in 3 places. One cabinet door in the laundry area was cracked. The blind in the family room still hung crooked. The guest bathroom smelled like old shampoo and mildew. There was a dent in the drywall near the stairs and a pile of trash bags by the back door that Caleb swore he would come back for but didn't. Linda stood in the basement with a trash bag in one hand and looked around at the space we hadn't really seen in years. Then she laughed once. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that comes out when your body can't decide whether to cry or breathe. Then she did cry. I put my arm around her, and she leaned into me. I don't regret it, she said. I know. I just can't believe how long we lived like this. I looked at the stained carpet, the empty corner where the bins had been, the basement window finally visible again. Me neither. We spent the next few days cleaning slowly. Not the frantic cleaning you do before company comes over. The kind of cleaning that feels like taking your home back one surface at a time. Linda scrubbed the guest bathroom with the window open. I patched the drywall dent and replaced the broken blind. We threw away things nobody claimed and put the rest in labeled boxes. In the family room, we gathered all the toys the kids still used and sorted them into 2 plastic bins. Linda wrote "for visits" on both of them in black marker. That made my throat tighten, because this was never about not wanting the grandchildren around. I wanted their crayons in the coffee table drawer. I wanted their little shoes by the door when they came over. I wanted the noise and the cartoons and the sticky fingers. I just didn't want their parents using my love for them as a lease. A week after they moved out, Caleb called. I let it ring twice before answering. His voice was stiff. "The kids want to see you and Mom." I looked across the room at Linda. She was sitting on the couch with a mug of tea. In the living room, we could finally sit in without stepping over laundry baskets. "We want to see them too," I said. "Let's set a time." There was a pause. "No lecture?" he asked. "Not today." He exhaled, maybe relieved, maybe annoyed. I added, "But there are rules now, Caleb. Visits are visits. Help is help. Living here again is not on the table." He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Fine." It wasn't warm. It wasn't healed. But it was honest, which was more than we had been working with for a long time. The first visit after they moved out was awkward for the adults and perfectly normal for the kids. My grandson ran straight to the toy bins and shouted, "Grandpa, you saved my trucks." My granddaughter climbed into Linda's lap with a cracker in each hand and got crumbs on her shirt within 30 seconds. Linda looked at me over the top of the little girl's head, and her eyes were wet but calm. That night, after they left, the family room had toys on the floor again. There were cracker crumbs on the couch. A sippy cup had rolled under the coffee table. I picked it up and smiled. Then I put the toys back into the 2 labeled bins, wiped the crumbs, and sat beside my wife in our own living room. No pizza boxes. No laundry piles. No storage bins blocking the walkway. No adults downstairs waiting for us to feel guilty enough to stop having boundaries. Just our house. Quiet, but not empty. Caleb and I are not fully repaired. Brianna is still chilly with me. Denise doesn't send moral speeches anymore. Marian apologized to Linda privately, but she never did offer to house anyone, which told me all I needed to know. I don't celebrate Caleb struggling with rent. I don't want my son to suffer. I want him to grow. Those are not the same thing. Even though for years he acted like any boundary was a betrayal. I still love him. I still love Brianna in the complicated way you love someone who is family, but has hurt your home. And I love my grandkids without condition. But love is not a blank check. Grandparent guilt is not a lease. Helping family doesn't mean letting 2 adults make your home unlivable while calling your exhaustion cruelty. I didn't make Caleb leave because I stopped loving him. I made him leave because loving him had turned into letting him stay a child. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.